Another one that deals with emotional intelligence. Many times we have felt nervous. We have faced a negative, bitter event. Because in the worldly life, in the life we always encounter bad events. This means we lose many things we cherish. We lose loved ones. We lose our health. We receive waste. We face attacks. We receive all kinds of bad things. So all of that affects our nerves, which means we are going to be nervous. So this unfortunate event that has happened and is bitter will make us feel bad. It will make us feel nervous. So what happens when we are nervous? When we feel bad? We cannot decide clearly. We cannot think clearly. This means that the negative emotional state of being nervous prevents the intellect from functioning properly. When a person is under a lot of pressure from nervousness, from what they feel, from what they sense, from what worries them, from what distresses them, then the person cannot think clearly and often will react or act in a very illogical way. It may be that you say inappropriate things, or it may be that you unintentionally break a relationship, or it may be that you hurt another person's heart or body, and thus you will lose the benefits of many years of what you have accumulated from friendship, from money, from everything, and you will lose it. So how can we control ourselves, our emotions, when we are nervous? Look, there are two types of people: the person with well-developed emotional intelligence and the normal, ordinary person who is already being dominated by their emotions. The difference is quite clear. A person who has well-developed emotional intelligence can manage themselves, can control themselves, can hold back when they are very nervous or very anxious, and can control the pressures. This means they do not allow themselves to be affected or influenced by their nervous state. This person can indeed endure many negative things, many bitter things. Look, a good leader will receive many negative things, but what they produce is positive energy. A good manager, a good family man is like this. He receives many negative things, but in the end, what he gives is positive energy. He will take the initiative and bring joy and motivate others. How does that process happen? Many times, many of us are the opposite of 2009, which means we do not have emotional intelligence that is well developed. When something bad happens to us, we feel bad, and sadness is visible on our faces. Worry is visible on our faces. We transmit negativity to others, becoming pessimistic, ungrateful beings who complain about everything, and we cannot endure anything like that. A person cannot manage, lead, or be a beneficial person for their society. The difference is clearly stated in a narration of the Prophet of Islam, which says that the believer has their sadness in their heart and their joy on their face. This means that the believer possesses an emotional intelligence skill that allows them to control their negative state, accept the bitter, and give the sweet. Thus, a person can manage and lead a society, but when a parent is weak, when they face an economic threat, I don't know, a security threat, in any form, when they receive a threat, something bitter happens to them, they have an accident, they come home, that parent turns into a crocodile, like a drug dragon that arrives home shouting. Why? Because he is nervous, because negative events have affected him, and that person does not have the emotional intelligence to control this negative state. Everything he feels, he expresses. All the bad state that is affecting him influences his actions. That is quite dangerous for a leader, for a director, for someone who is managing a society, a school, or an institute. How can we change ourselves from being weak, fragile beings to beings that when we receive something unpleasant, something bad, react in a bitter, nervous way? People who can adapt in the worst situations, in the worst conditions, can adjust, can adapt. These people can live in any economic situation. I don't know, the situation of friendship, any situation, they handle it. And all the bitter things that happen to them, they do not react nervously, but rather they will think, use their intellect, and make a logical decision. These individuals are those who have developed emotional intelligence through practice by deepening their thoughts and by restraining themselves and abstaining from material things, which has given them great strength to be able to control themselves. But on the contrary, weak people, ordinary people, the person who has the habit of doing whatever they want, listen to that word. The person who does whatever they want is doomed to fall. Why? Because this person always follows their emotions. I like to be morbid, so it will lead to sin. This person who has this habit, or rather this bad habit, this bad addiction to do whatever they want, will always be affected by all the negative events. Allow me to give an example. A student, a disciple of Imam Khomeini says one day, I went to visit Imam Khomeini in Najaf during a very hot summer. The summer in the city of Najaf reached up to 45 degrees Celsius. The heat was intense. So we went there and saw a plate of cut watermelon, served watermelon, served fruit. So when we had sat down with Imam Khomeini, instead of serving us, he hid that essence under the bed. Imagine, they arrive where Imam Khomeini is. There is a plate of watermelon, and since he doesn't want the watermelon, he is going to hide it. What happened? I mean, after 1 hour of the meeting, all the students left, and I stayed with Imam Khomeini, and I dared to say to him, Professor, teacher, what's wrong with you? You are a very generous person, a person who is very, we can say, spiritually purified. What is happening to you? Why have you hidden the watermelon? Look, brother, I'm going to explain something to you that may be incomprehensible to you, but listen carefully. Imam Khomeini said, my son, listen carefully, my son. That summer, I have reflected on myself. I have analyzed myself. I saw that I like to eat tasty and sweet watermelon. That watermelon was the same. So I saw that if I am going to give my passion what 2009 desires, I am putting myself in a state of being dependent on material things. Did my body need vitamins, useful things? Yes. But let's go ahead and try to see how this watermelon is. And that student said, I started eating watermelon 2009, but it had salt. It had salt. How can it be? The Imam told me just as I have explained, my son, for me not to enjoy and not to be attached to material things, sprinkle salt on watermelon for those who have not given my passion what they desire. It is a wild animal. Your passion, when you give it everything it desires, you want to observe other women, you start to do it. You want to commit this sin, another, you are going to be focused on pleasures. A human being focused on pleasures is indeed doomed to failure. Why? Because every day an emotion is directing you. Here today and there tomorrow. And every day it is changing the course of life. So this person is going to be a fragile person, a person who is brandable, a person who is not stable. Now, that person eats, and I begin to say that from the beginning they are making accusations, that they do not become an ambitious person, a person whose passion is driving them, whose desires are dominating them. No, it takes everything away. So, the day that Benjamini is flying from Paris to Tehran, they are going to ask the leader of the revolutionists how he feels. Normal. Nothing special. Why nothing special? Everyone is dying of so much enthusiasm that the first Islamic revolution is taking place in the city of Tehran. And you, as the great leader, are coming back. No, it doesn't happen. Why don't you sit down? Because a person who has learned to control their emotions already knows how to manage themselves and does not surrender to the hands of others. That person does not lose. All the pressures against that person will not work. They will threaten you. You remain resilient on your path, strong. How many revolutionary leaders do you know who, after a bit of pressure and sanctions from the Americans, lost their spirit and all motivation? How many leaders do you know, some even committed suicide? Why? Because they did not have enough resilience. When will a person have resilience? When will they make all decisions intellectually? Now, the same Khomeini, in the early years of the Islamic Revolution, when only a year has passed since the Islamic Revolution, a crazy pro-American dictator named Saddam Hussein is going to attack Iran. The secretary of Imunjueni says, I went to where Imujun was, and to inform me, very worried, running to inform Lemon Juan, Imam Huni was doing ekame, which is something done before performing the prayer, and so on until the end. So the moment was waiting to be about to start entering the rest, saying, Allah, authorities, I rushed and entered the creation of the youth magnet. And I will tell you that Satan, how many armies has Jose attacked us with? We have the army dissolved, we have nothing to defend. Many of the great generals of the army have escaped because they were pro-king, pro-Shah, and have fled the country. We have nothing. Look, this is how you can lead a country. Well, a thief has thrown a stone, it doesn't matter. Silly, of course. He started to pray. He started to pray. Of course, he was a responsible man, but he was not an excited person. He was not a person affected by desires. He was not attentive to his passion. He was not attentive to material things. Thus, he was able to withstand both the West and the East. And now for us, the slightest detail of negative things we receive makes everything come to an end. I can no longer live. God, where are you? What are you doing? God, why have you left me? Why have you abandoned me? Do you see it? The difference between a person with developed emotional intelligence, who, like with tazkiyah, with the purification of the soul, no longer has their soul hanging on to desires. That will be Imam Khomeini, the perfect example. He will be a prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Says that when in a battle, as the fear increased, the pressure from the enemy, we would take refuge beside the prophet Jacob. It is a bravado. In the battle of Uhud, when they martyred his uncle Hamza, the great battalion of Islam, the great strongman, they martyred a large group of Muslims and even spread a great rumor that the Prophet had also been martyred. The one who stands firm before everyone is the Prophet of Islam, the most excellent Prophet Muhammad. It gives the example of a purified person, a strong person, a person with character Yuzan. But on the contrary, you will see that the kings, the dictators of the world, even many presidents who come to power today are weak people because they seek their passion, their ambition, and are focused on material things. So they are fragile. They are breakable. With one shock, they are already lost. They lose control over their nerves. They will fall into hasty, illogical, and self-serving decisions. They will make decisions only to save themselves. So they cannot make important decisions while navigating the twists and turns in their political career. And at these points, these are the downfalls of politicians. Are you going to see how it is possible that Ayatollah Khomeini, a great political leader in the Islamic Revolution in the Islamic Republic of Iran, after so many years of sanctions, can keep an entire people steadfast? Why? How can it be? Because he is a person who has gone through these steps. It means he has purified his soul from an emotional state of being nervous. Do not let nervousness and threats attack you. You are not an ordinary person, just someone who thinks of God. It will be like this. In Karbala, on the day of Ashura, when the enemies were increasingly pressing Imam Hussein, Imam Joseph would become more steadfast, stronger. The enemies of Imam Joseph narrate that we have not seen a person in pain who has had their children, brothers, and companions sacrificed or massacred, yet remains as strong as the Emojus until the very last moment. Why is that? Why don't you allow negative emotions to dominate you, to impose their own, we could say, tendency, right? The moment for that intellectual path, logic, 2009, of strength, every time Monse became more alone, he became more steadfast. On his face, there was more light, more strength, more energy. How can this be? You are driving, you are going to run over a person, you are going to have an accident with your car, you will lose everything, you are going to lose your business, you can no longer get back up. Why? Because negative emotions dominate you. You fail in marriage and you think the world has come to an end. No, you can get up. Again, build your life, reform your failures again, and rise up once more. Ali, let's continue discussing the topic in more detail in the next subject.